Hey guys, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Phantom Friday. So today we're going to be looking in at the hauntings at Nottingham Castle. So myself and my husband went to go and visit Nottingham Castle, like ourselves in the flesh, and we also went to apparently the oldest pub in the UK. I think it's just in the UK, I'm not too sure, which can be found underneath the castle right next to the caves. 5-minute walk away from, like, not even a 5-minute walk from the cave. We went in there. It was really cute and cozy. It was very unique because it also is built into the caves. I'll put some photos up here or something of us sat in the ye old Jerusalem, and let's just say throughout the whole visit of visiting Nottingham Castle and the ye old Jerusalem, we did have a few cold spots and it just felt quite eerie. We didn't experience any of the things that I'm going to touch upon, apart from that it was cold spots and it just felt a bit eerie, like a bit like you weren't, I know that we weren't alone because there was actual people there, but even when we were in rooms where it was just me and my husband, I don't know, it kind of felt a little bit like we weren't alone. So located in Nottingham, England, the nearly 1,000-year-old castle sits on Castle Rock, which I think is something to do with House of Dragons. Am I saying that right? Like, it's called Castle Rock, like somewhere in, like, I think it inspired it or something, I'm not too sure, but Castle Rock, I want to say. So the castle looked over the now very modern city of Nottingham. It has a lot of history behind it, of course. It is 1,000 years old. Like, that would definitely have a few secrets and naughty tales about itself within its walls. So with that being said, I'm obviously going to delve into the history of the castle first before we can get into any of the spooky happenings within the castle, because otherwise you guys wouldn't know what's going on and why it's been going on. But if you guys want more of a overview of the history, I'm more than happy to do more of like a history session on Nottingham Castle. So Nottingham Castle was first constructed in 1068, 2 years after the Battle of Hastings, on orders of William the Conqueror. It started as a wooden structure and then was upgraded to a stone castle during the reign of King Henry II. It did serve as, for very many years, as living quarters for many nobles and royalty. For example, King Richard, also known as the Lionheart, and Prince John and the Robin Hood. So if you guys have ever been to Nottingham Castle, and as you would have seen the photos that I would have put up somewhere, this is where the story of Robin Hood was originated. So that's how the legend goes. There has also been a fire at the castle. Civil wars fought here and many royal deaths, of course. You know, it's a living quarters for royals and nobles, so of course there was like quite a few deaths there as well. So let's get started on our first ghost, known as Mortimer. Roger Mortimer, Earl of March, was one of the medieval England's most controversial figures. So he was the lover of Queen Isabella and helped Queen Isabella overthrow the king by allegedly murdering her husband, King Edward III. So Mortimer ended up helping rule over Nottingham for a short period of time, and we'll get into that. But oh my gosh, like the drama! It is said that in 1330, Edward III's supporters secretly crept into the castle's hidden tunnel, famously known now as Mortimer's Hole. So Mortimer was captured, imprisoned, and then later executed as a traitor. So like I said, the drama is honestly the perfect recipe for an unsettled spirit and with unsettled business. So this famous haunting at Nottingham Castle is said that it has Mortimer's soul. Even though he didn't die right there where King Edward III's friends captured him, they say because that was his demise, like that was the point where his soul was there, like, oh my god, I've been found. They've captured me, this is it, I'm done. It was like he realized it, his soul realized it, and that's why he haunts that area. Various visitors and their stories describe footsteps pacing back and forth as if Mortimer is reliving his final days in captivity, because that is where they also had the dungeons. Some accounts claim that he appears as a shadowy figure moving through the tunnels, which, girl, that's creepy. Creepy. One of the eeriest details linked to Mortimer isn't just the ghostly shadowy apparitions, it's the voice of Queen Isabella herself pleading with King Edward III's friends and Edward himself, pleading to be there, like, you know, don't kill my boyfriend or husband or lover or whoever he is, to Queen Isabella. So according to legend, people have heard, and I quote, the Queen Isabella pleading. So this is what she says: "Have pity on gentle Mortimer." That's kind of sad. So it is said that she is heard begging for Mortimer's life, knowing that her lover is, you know, he's gonna die. Like, for what he's done, or allegedly done, because apparently it was allegedly, but is it? At this point? So people have asked, like, why is Mortimer's hole like the center of the hauntings? Like, why there? And there's loads of theories on the matter of, like, you know, because of like his demise and, you know, everything that happened to him, like that was his downfall and his realization of, oh god, I have really messed up here. And so his literal whole entire soul has just gone, this is where we're going to be haunting my love. Like, that's where I am. The other theory is because the tunnels are carved out of sandstone, the tunnels that are underneath Nottingham Castle. So it was back then a secret route for, I guess, like if the castle was under siege or something, like that's where the royalists and, you know, the nobles would go and hide, is down there. So there must have been something going on for Mortimer to go down there, because it's not like a usual thing, and it wasn't like a secret meet-up point for Mortimer and Queen Isabella, really, because like they were out in the open, you know, like Mortimer was, like, you know, known and stuff to be with Isabella, and, you know, they didn't really care. Like, they were there like, well, this is our castle now. So they were very out in the open about their relationship. And so there was no need for Mortimer to go down there, but for some reason he had to go down there on the day that obviously it all just went for him. So we've already touched upon our next ghost, which is Queen Isabella of France. The ghostly stories of Queen Isabella at Nottingham Castle are some of the most emotional and unsettling legends tied to the castle. Unlike many ghost tales that focus on like revenge or violence, Isabella's haunting is said to be supposedly driven by grief and desperation and also guilt. And that is all because of her lover, Mortimer. Isabella was often nicknamed the She-Wolf of France because of her reputation of overthrowing her own husband, Edward II, alongside with her lover, Roger Mortimer, the ghost we were just literally talking about. And they ruled for quite a few years together, actually. Like I mentioned earlier, everything changed, not just for Mortimer, but for Isabella as well. Isabella's ghostly presence is best described as more hauntingly audibly. Basically, she yaps quite a lot rather than visuals. Visitors claim that in and around the castle, especially near the tunnels and caves, a woman's voice can sometimes be heard crying and pleading, which others believe to be her pleading, like I said earlier, pleading with her son to spare Roger Mortimer's life. It is also said that you know she's nearby as you will feel the presence of sorrow and utter sadness. Like, unlike very many ghosts, Isabella's ghost is said not to frighten people or scare anyone. There's no attacks or anything, just that she's really sad. Some accounts say that you would feel cold and this like heavy atmosphere around you, and in certain parts of the castle as well. So that feeling of being watched, like you aren't alone, I was talking about earlier, that might have been her, because that's what is also said, that you have this feeling of somebody watching you. That could have been her. Just saying. It is very, very rare for there to be any reports of her visually, but there has been at least a couple of a female shadowy figure. So outlines of a female, maybe like long hair, a bodice of a female, maybe quite short. Whereas with Mortimer's, it is quite common. I wouldn't say common, but it is a bit more for him, that you would see him visually as a shadowy figure, a manly shadowy figure. But like I said earlier, Isabella, I want to call her Elizabeth, Isabella is more audible. She's more talkative. So why is it that her spirit lingers at Nottingham Castle? It's probably because of her sudden loss of power when King Edward III took control of the castle when he had had enough of his mother and his mother's lover's reign. And that sudden loss of power, and then also the sudden loss losing her lover as well, is crazy. Like, one person can't handle all of that, you know? Like, you've lost your boyfriend and then you've also lost basically your voice. Like, you've lost your power, you've lost everything. So that is probably why she is heard to be lingering about. Okay, moving on. As I mentioned earlier, the Nottingham Castle had a fire, and I mean, girl, it had a fire. And let's talk about the ghostly happenings as a result of said fire. So the fire at Nottingham Castle was a result of the riots in 1831 during the Reform riots, leaving it a shell for decades. At the time, the castle wasn't this royal fortress anymore. It had been rebuilt as a mansion and was owned by the Duke of Newcastle, who was a strongly opposed political reform, and this made him really unpopular in Nottingham and kind of nearly all over England. So large crowds gathered in Nottingham and were protesting failure of the reform bill. The protests turned violent and the rioters broke into the castle and set the place on fire. So were there any victims? Well, surprisingly, there were no documented deaths when the fire occurred. So the Duke wasn't actually there at the time of the fire, and the building was being extravated. Is that the word? I don't know. Basically, it was empty. It was completely empty. So most of the violence and the casualties happened in the riots across the city, and not specifically in the castle. However, some of the rioters were imprisoned and then later on executed for their crimes. So is there any ghost linked to the fire? No. There wasn't any ghost linked to the fire. It's just one of those things that the fire happened. Nobody actually died from it. However, it is reported that many hear unexplained footsteps and noises, feeling that the room that they're in is occupied, and there's this really unsettling feeling. Some stories of shadowy figures, though they aren't clearly linked to any fire victims of any kind, but like I said, it wasn't documented that there was anybody from the fire that was trapped in the fire or what have you, know what I mean? Like, there was no one actually, there's nothing on a piece of paper, but it doesn't mean that it didn't happen, you know? Then who are these people that are walking around making you feel really uneasy, feeling watched, you know? Like, who are these spirits? They've got to be something to do with the fire, right? Like, I don't know. That's where my head goes. I'm there like, it might have been undocumented, but doesn't mean that there wasn't somebody in there. Because back then, like, you know, they didn't care for servants, they didn't care for anybody lower than them. And if anything, if they did in some form, they would have hidden it. You know what I mean? Like, they would have been there like, oh no, they ran away with jewels and they disappeared, you know, they found a better life somewhere else. You know, if it was a servant of some kind. So yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't sit right with me that, you know, these certain feelings that you don't get with the other ghosts are happening in certain parts of the castle, and there's no explanation as to who it might be. So it's got to be at least somebody from the fire, right? I don't know. That's just where my brain goes. It makes sense to me. Okay, so we're kind of going back in time a little bit to the English Civil War. So the English Civil War started in 1641 when King Charles I called to arms. The war went on for as little as under 4 years. After King Charles I surrendered at the Scottish, parliamentarian, I'm just going to put the word somewhere on the screen, army, the Scottish army basically. Now, with the background of the Civil War, it is said that you can hear the unison of boots marching on the grounds around the castle, almost like as if, you know, the army is in motion basically. Also, during the Civil War, there was quite a few sieges, 3 to be exact, and after the last siege, the population of Nottingham became ill with the plague. So not only did the soldiers trying to protect their families from the war, but there was also this plague going around as well. Back then, you either died from being killed by your enemy or you died because of the plague. Which one would you pick? Which one would you guys pick? Being killed by your enemy or being killed because of the plague? So that is today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up for me. Comment down below, how would you prefer to die, given the 2 options? Impaled, I guess, or blown up or shot by your enemy, or the plague. Which one would you do? I wanna know in the comments below. But anyway, and most importantly, make sure to subscribe so then you guys know when I am uploading and what you guys are going to be getting. And if you guys want to follow me on any of my socials, all my socials are linked below as well, just to see me out of the screen on YouTube. So yeah, give me a follow on any of the socials. They are all linked down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, my little bees.